Welcome back, everyone. You are watching the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage YouTube channel. And before you is a Necchi Supernova, sometimes called the BU Supernova. This, of course, is a machine you've seen on this channel before. I've actually overhauled a number of these in the past. I think I had one dedicated straight stitch version, but which is beautifully made and was a great sewing machine, but the majority of these were sold, or the majority of those that I have found, I should say, have been the zigzag capable models. When this machine came out, it was really a game changer. It was actually a redesign of earlier BU models, and like the earlier models, when you do zigzag with the Necchi, not only does the needle move back and forth, obviously, but actually you will see that there's a shaft below that moves the actual race and bobbin case in a lateral motion, which is really, really extraordinary. It's one of the things unique about Necchis, and I think I have to go back and make sure I know that this is accurate, but I believe this was done because this machine was designed to accommodate double needle stitching. And in order to have double needles and zigzag, I believe this was something that helped make that happen when you were doing double needles. In any case, it's an extra piece of engineering that the Necchi company was able to provide. So again, I've demonstrated this machine and I've made videos on it. This particular one I've had for a while because I was missing a bolt. One of the bolts in the that attaches the machine bed to the pins, the hinge pins in the table, was missing. I thought I had one that was close, and I didn't have it threaded right apparently, and broke it off. So I had to remove the bolt. Oh, and anyway, I ordered. I think I did a video, I have a video coming up if I haven't posted it already on where I find things for sewing machines, and I actually found that one at Central Michigan Sewing, and was able to get the bolt. And so now the machine is installed. It is finally ready. It has a brand new titanium coated organ brand needle, size 14, and I actually, while I was testing it to make sure it was operating, now after I had finished all of the overhaul work, I actually made a little project for myself. What you are looking at is linen. This is a sort of a natural undyed flax linen fabric, and the reason you see it looking like this, it looks like a piece of stromboli here. I actually decided to take on a little, and I mean little and simplistic, sewing project. Now, for those of you who actually know how to sew, you may or may not be able to see them right away, but this is not perfect. And obviously when you have thread that is literally the same color as the flax, it helps. But what I basically did was I took fabric and I simply rolled it and created it's like a long, narrow ravioli. But what I did was I had one of those things you can put around your neck when you want to, if you're, like if I get back from the gym and I'm stiff, I can use that around my neck, and it's actually nice to have in the winter. People have these things. Sometimes they're full of corn seeds, not popcorn seeds, but corn or rice. This one has buckwheat hulls in it. I think I got it. I don't know where I bought it, at some store. Anyway, the original was made of poor quality fabric, and it kind of fell apart. So I wanted a fabric that would tolerate high heat, because I heat it in the microwave for about 2 to 3 minutes. It gets nice and toasty. So I chose flax linen. Flax linen, of course, has one of the highest heat tolerances of certainly any natural fabric. And so I thought that would be good. So anyway, I had this fabric on hand, and I went and I basically folded my stitches over, rolled them, and I don't even know what to call this. So anyway, I don't think that's technically a French seam. I don't know. Many of the people who watch my channel know a lot about sewing, and I do not. So for something that I did myself, having never had a sewing class, I'm actually happy with how this turned out, and I say that with humility because I know that there are people who actually sew who uh, who could easily do this. I mean, this is like sewing a, for those of you who sew garments, sewing something like this is like, like drawing a straight line or something. It's not, you wouldn't find it tough or hard. And you can see here an area here. I have to go back. I was using the zigzag to make sure I didn't have any, raw edges here, and I'm going to have to go back and do that. Anyway, for today, though, I wanted to show you, I'm doing my final test stitch for this machine before it's listed. Now, for those of you who are new to vintage sewing machines, or those of you, I know it looks like we're on a boat right now. I'm trying to get my camera to my angle here on the my tripod to be still. For those of you who are fairly new to vintage sewing machines, you will hear names like Singer and Pfaff and Husqvarna and Bernina and Necchi, along with others. And I think, of course, White is one of the great names in sewing machines. Well, the Necchi company, this machine was made during what I consider its finest era. The era begins, I believe, before the Second World War, late 1930s. I think the first BU was just called the BU, I believe, was created. And of course, those of you who've ever researched the Necchi company know that Vittorio Necchi, who was the founder of the company, brilliant industrialist, and he wanted to create a domestic machine because he was actually involved in industrial machines. And anyway, you have the BU, you have a few other models. There's one with the letter J, and then you end up with the BU Nova, the BU followed by the BU Mira, and the BU Nora. You have these female names that go with them, and then you have the BU Supernova. And then later, I think they had one called the Supernova 2 Deluxe, extraordinaire, whatever. But anyway, this machine is part of the era of all steel, magnificent construction. This machine, this particular model, was not all that sticky. It had some issues, some things I had to unstick. Remember, Necchis have some of the closest, the tightest tolerances for moving parts, and if a machine's going to gum up, a Necchi is one of the first to do so. What you get in return, as long as you have gotten it moving, which you can do, I've demonstrated how to do that in the past with many machines. With a Necchi, just use it. Don't let it sit for years and years, and it will be fine. There's nothing fragile about them. They just don't tolerate sitting for many years with oil, and they get stuck. They get frozen a little bit more easily. But once you have the machine unfrozen, if yours is working fine and you use it, just oil it regularly and you should be fine. There's nothing to be all that wary of. I also did a video where, if I haven't posted it yet, it'll post soon. This wonderful, beautifully machined piece here, this lever, has an insert and a bolt that tightens it. It had come loose over the years, and I'd done a video on that, how to reset it. It wasn't broken, it was just loose and flopped out. Let's see. And of course, I've demonstrated also how you wind a bobbin on a Necchi, which of course the Italians came up with their own special way to do that. But this is, again, part of the era of I call them heirloom machines, and one of the finest of the Italian vintage machines. The hand wheel over here, of course, is aluminum, and you polish it up and it's gorgeous. They didn't have to do it out of aluminum, but they chose to, just from a different time. So what am I going to do today? I've been doing some test stitching here, and I have some fabric that's dark colored so that you can see. But the thread, incidentally, is some thread that I originally purchased. It's a finer thread than I normally sew with, and I bought it because it's silk. It's actually real silk, not fake poly silk. And I purchased it to be used, and I bought a bunch of spools of this, if I'm ever able to do a video on and resurrect one of the few sergers that I purchased. And so, anyway, this is, I chose to use the silk mainly because it was the same color as the flax linen that I showed you before, because I I know that my stitching is not glorious by any stretch of the imagination. But just to mention to you, for those of you who, if you have cotton thread that works, many of you sew with cotton. Some people choose polyester or even nylon threads because they are sometimes revered to be stronger than cotton. If you ever want a natural fiber, a natural thread that is really strong, you would want to look at silk. Silk is one of the strongest of the natural fibers. Anyway, let's see what we can come up with here. Again, I've got this dark color. It's sort of a light tan colored thread. And I'll just come over and let's see, I'll start on a side here that I haven't used. Let's come over here so you can see the machine in action. Usually I start with straight stitch. This time I think I'll actually start with zigzag since I'm all set up for it. And then we'll switch over to straight. And I'll zoom in here so you can get just got some nice natural light today. And I haven't ironed this fabric. The tension on the machine is fantastic. Sometimes you can adjust tension, but and these tension assemblies on these machines work quite well. However, this is cotton, this blue fabric of mine, and I have not really ironed it. So I'm just holding my thread tails here until I get the needle going in here. And what I'll do is go ahead and I think I have it on the sort of a medium length. This actually we'll do the longest length. By the way, if you are new, I just adjusted here. 4, of course, would be the longest stitch length right here. And then I think I had it on 2 over here. So I'll come up all the way to 4, and then we'll play with that a bit. Of course, this is my reverse. Let's come back, get back to our close-up here. When you have good light and some contrasting colors, the stitching should show up fairly well. That's my plan anyway. And of course I can slow the needle. I can do, you can see a much slower speed, or I can speed it up. And of course she has reverse, he has reverse. He. Now, let's come back to the center. Now, by the way, I should have mentioned to you, this actually is one of those machines that when you lift the presser foot, there are 2 stages. The first one is here, so you can simply move fabric around, and then the second one, you can come up a little higher. So that's actually part of its design. Not all machines do that, and so if yours does not, it doesn't mean your machine is broken. It just means your machine didn't have the fancy Italian option that this one has. All right, so what are we going to do? Now I want to shorten the stitch so we can see what might look like sort of a satin stitch. Let's see how that turns out. I'm going to come down in 2. Let's go to maybe 1.5. We'll try that. I could probably go narrower, but I'd like to we'll see how this looks. All right, let's see how what kind of zigzag we get with the shorter length. And I'm going to shorten it even more. We'll get down to maybe a half, halfway between 0 and 1. See what it does then. Sometimes when you look at features from the vintage year and you think, oh, it has zigzag, well, big deal. Well, actually, it was a big deal because generations of people had to do their overcasting by hand, or they had to use some sort of attachment. If you've ever used a zigzag attachment, well, you may or may not find that a great thing. So, or easy to use or practical to use. So I'm going to now get my stitch length back. We're going to go back over to 4, and over here with the zigzag, I'm going to again push down on this lever. Remember, it's spring loaded, right? So when you pull down on it, don't just let go of it. It's going to slam because there's a spring pushing it. But there's also a spring holding it up, and that's why these little black pieces of steel, which are actually pinned in place by these little rods. So if I turn, hold the lever, don't let it sit free. It's going to slam on you. You don't want that. So turn the little plastic. It's plastic, but it's attached to metal. And now I've loosened that. It's like a set screw, thumb screw, and I can slide it all the way over, right? And this one over here on the right, you can leave. I don't have to loosen that because the only time you would loosen it is if you want to lock in the lever. Maybe you want your zigzag width to be more, not quite as wide as what I'm showing you today, right? You can set it anywhere in here. And then of course you pull this over, you snug that one on the left. You have to snug them obviously or it'll push. That spring's pretty strong. Okay. And then now why would you want to snug the one on the right? Sometimes you'll find that when you're sewing either straight or particularly with zigzag, that if you don't lock in the zigzag width, as you work with thicker fabrics, you will sometimes notice that the thickness of the fabric will actually cause the adjustment on your zigzag, and even sometimes with your straight stitch length, it won't be consistent, right? You may get a stitch, but you're going to see inconsistency because the mechanism is actually being moved because there's more stress on the machine, even though it was designed to sew some thick fabrics. So for what I'm doing today, I'm not really worried about setting anything on the right. I don't expect, well, first of all, I'm now going to switch to straight stitch. But like I say, you can set them. I believe a lot of the manuals will often tell you to set and snug any kind of length or width adjustment. Many of the vintage machines will not make you do that as long as you're not sewing heavy, but your results can vary there. Okay, so we'll go into straight stitch, and I'm in a long straight stitch here, and then when my needle's right there, I'm now going to shorten my stitch like I did before, but now we're going to have that nice short straight stitch. And then I'll pull this up and we can all take a look at the stitches. You know, are the stitches consistent, right? And the Neckis I have found to be very, and I'm just going back to lock my stitch in. Okay, well, let's take a look at what this 1956-57 machine can accomplish. So, you see here I have a long, where my thumb is, a long, wide zigzag, and then I came around and I did I shortened my length but kept the width, and then I shortened the length again. Now I could shorten this even more and end up, and you can see when I flip the fabric over, that's a really nice balanced stitch. When you have things adjusted properly, you get, and it looks pretty nice and smooth here. If I shortened it even more and gotten it down to say somewhere between 0 and 1/4, I would have what people call a satin stitch. I believe back in the vintage times they used to call them embroidery stitches. Anyway, after I did that, I came along here and I did the long straight stitch you see here, and then I shortened it to get that nice, really short but very consistent stitch. And again, when we switch over to the other side, it's nice and balanced, right? And so again, this is one of the things that people often talk about vintage machines, especially Neckis. They'll often talk about sewing with some really heavy fabrics. But I have found that in my own experience, yes, you can do that with a Supernova. It has the power, but I actually find certain machines really excel extra nice at certain things. So when I'm using a Singer 301 or a Necchi Supernova, I prefer light to medium fabrics. in terms of when I'm test stitching, the machines really they're really happy doing that. They will work with heavier material. If you are sewing really heavy stuff, you may find, some of you may have discovered that the earlier Neckis, like the BU Novas, the BU Miras, are they may or may not want to sew heavier fabrics. But again, it can vary. You may have the opposite experience of what I just described. But anyway, there is the Necchi BU Supernova. It doesn't say BU there, but it is. And this machine is available. If you see the listing, you're welcome to reach out to me and set up a time to come and see it. You can do your own test stitching on it. I always like to do this before I list the machine so that I know it's ready to go. Anyway, thank you all for watching. If you are a Necchi fan, whether you have a Supernova or a Supernova Ultra 2 or any kind of Necchi, put your comments down there below. And if you are not subscribed to this channel, feel free to do so. There is no cost. And you can also check the little bell symbol, which will remind you of when I have posted the latest video. And I appreciate all of you watching.